And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on our podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Jones Loflin. I'll read you a little bit of some of the highlights from his impressive bio. So, Jones has made it his life's work to deliver powerful ideas and practical solutions to individuals around the world so that they can achieve most of what is most important to them. His books are celebrated as illuminating and his presentations are unforgettable. He has what he calls the 3P approach, which is powerful ideas connected to practical solutions delivered with a personal approach. He's written a bunch of books. He's a world renowned speaker. One of the interesting little nuggets that I find intriguing is in a previous life, he was one of the trainers for a little book you might have heard of called Who Moved My Cheese that, if I recall, did fairly well. So, anyway, thanks for joining us today, Jones.
Oh, what an honor, Peter. Yes, Who Moved My Cheese was quite a stepping stone for me, and as you may have seen, they're coming out with a sequel to that book, so I'm excited when that comes out. I think it's supposed to come out sometime this year.
Is that, where the hell did I put the cheese or no? Is that?
Well, it's fascinating you mentioned that. Dr. Spencer Johnson, who was the author of Who Moved My Cheese, I was having dinner with him one evening, and he was, planning that book even years ago before he passed away. And he was talking about, I kept asking people, what would the next book be about? So I thought that was an interesting approach. So that may very well be the title.
Well, stay tuned. So anyway, here we are, and you're sort of the classic author, thought leader, speaker, doing lots and lots of different things with your content. Give me a sense of some of the things that you're experimenting with that are working well, and maybe some of the things that you've experimented with that might not have worked so well.
Let's start with the not so well, shall we? Uh,
Sure.
that's always a fun place to start because it's easier to see what works and what doesn't work. I had a fantastic conversation a little over a year ago with my co-author from Juggling Elephants, Todd Musig, who's a tremendous marketer and does great work at Franklin Covey, and I was telling him about wow, my clients are beginning to come to me not just for work-life balance, time management. They're expecting me to have solutions on change and expecting me to have solutions on leadership. And I said, I'm so excited about that. He said, why?
That's a great question.
And I'm like, well, because they see me as more than just a time management, work-life balance speaker and trainer. And so that's what, and he said, well, how's that going for you? And I said, well, I'm excited about it, but I said, man, I'm just drowning and trying to keep up with content and which book to read next and what to focus on next. And so that's what wasn't working so well for me, is really trying to go wider and to almost be all things to all people.
So let me comment on that because I think it's a great point. So when you serve your clients well and your clients say, that was a really delicious apple you sold me, do you have oranges as well? Our intuition and our instincts are to go, sure. And it's somewhat flattering to the ego. And it's nice that clients want more. And you go, well, that's just a little bit outside of my core. And then the next client asks for something else and something else, et cetera. I always counsel my clients to say, listen, you've got to be the X guy or gal, meaning sort of solve for X. And just from a marketing, branding, positioning perspective, it is better off, although sometimes it requires a lot of energy and discipline to say, I'm the X guy. This is what I do. I'm, work-life balance, time management, whatever your thing is. And I'm as good as it as anybody. And you can go really, really deep with me. If you want to ask me about communication styles or something, sure, I'm a smart guy and I can figure it out, but it's really not my forte. And sometimes there's power in saying no. So it sounds like that was sort of your takeaway from that experience as well.
Oh, absolutely. And so he said those exact words to me almost, Peter. He said, what do people come to you for where they can say, yeah, Jones hits it, Jones nails it. And that began me on a journey to really develop more of a specific tagline, which is now people ask me, what do you do? Well, I help people struggling with too much to do.
So I love that. So that tagline is wickedly simple, and it doesn't include, and I also do this and 17 other things, right? So if I were to meet you, whatever, on an airplane or see you present, I'm going to walk away, I'm capable of remembering that little nugget and going, he's the guy to call for that. So I love that. So give me some other things in terms of what's working and lessons learned.
Yeah, well, growing out of that, it's really helped refine my everything from my reading to my content development. It's a filter from which to apply and to plan almost and prioritize my work. Is that okay? What are the tools and resources I'm developing to help individuals and organizations who are struggling with too much to do? And it gives me a way to shape content, and even existing content that I've had in the past, to go back and look at it again. Say, okay, how do I break this out differently? How do I
Sure.
create that differently? So that's what's working. That's a big piece of what's working for me.
Let me ask you a question on that. So, oftentimes in this space of thought leadership, smart people don't apply classic business rules, right? So, if you were to all of a sudden own a factory that produced pens or something, you would become a Six Sigma guru on the most efficient ways to use pens and use the least amount of resources, ink and plastic and whatnot coming in to get the most pens coming out the back end, so you'd be profitable, right? Because that's what we do,
Correct.
right? However, in this space, one of the benefits of really being sharp and focused as to what your content is really about efficiency and repurposing, right? So, you mentioned a little bit earlier, so I didn't know what books to read. So if you have to sort of be great at 4 or 5 different buckets of content, it's incredibly inefficient, right? To sort of be the guru du jour of whatever. But the fact that you're so deep in your stuff means that, I don't want to say lazy, but you can repurpose lots and lots of what you're doing. You can create a workshop and deliver it 20 times. You can, when a new client comes to you with something else, you're probably already 80% of the way there in terms of already cracking the code. Could you touch on that for a bit?
Yeah, and you, again, Peter, you're wise, so wise, and put it so beautifully, is that it really does help me to say, how do I get better? How do I get more effective? I mean, I love it now when a client comes to me who's struggling with some time management, something, or work life balance issue that's not your simple time management 101 type thing, and we've got to work through that. But I have more tools to help them with, because I'm focusing my efforts both on creating content, but also in research and looking for things that help me better serve the clients that I do have, which is a hallmark of what we want to do as a speaker or a trainer, is serve your clients so well they wouldn't think of going anywhere else. And I kind of had a few of those moments this year with several of my clients who I would get calls, because I also do some coaching around time management, because that was a way to go deeper instead of wider. And I had someone call me, and I was one of those moments and just go, oh, because they said, I was told that if I was struggling with time management, I needed to call you. I'm like, yes, that's
Exactly.
what we're looking for.
Well, that's so right, and I think it's that difference, which is incredibly, it's clearly noticeable on the client side between being proficient in your craft and a deep expert.
Right. Oh, I love that phrase. Yeah, proficient versus deep expert. Yeah.
So what else is working? What else are you experimenting with? Because it's just life is just one long series of experiments, right? That's sort of surprising with positive outcomes.
Sure. I mentioned earlier about coaching. I have made a concerted effort this past year to really hone my coaching skills. I'm actually working through an organization to become certified as a professional coach, because I found that clients, as you well know, just a keynote speech or a training session in adult learning world, they're not picking up a whole lot, maybe 20% of what happens. And so much of what helps people actually change behaviors happens before and after the training. And so I have really worked on becoming a more effective coach around the area of time management and work life balance, because I'm finding that's a way for me to serve my existing clients who say, oh yeah, that was great training. It's a value added, something I offer. Hey, when I come into your organization, I'll offer you a 3-month coaching package for 2 or 3 of your clients, for the ones who you think could benefit the most. It's also worked in reverse, where some of my time management clients then say, hey, Jones, I'm part of this organization. You've really helped me. I'd love to suggest you as a speaker or trainer for our annual conference or event. So that's something that's worked really well for me. Now,
One comment on coaching. One is, on one end of the spectrum, it's incredibly inefficient in terms of it's not scalable, right? You're selling an hour or a chunk of time for some dollars. But if you extrapolate that in terms of a sort of a client, management or client service mindset, there are cases where that's the right solution. And I also think, and you sort of glossed over it really quickly, it's the ultimate R&D lab, right? To find out, because in a workshop environment, you're not getting as deep at the individual level. But when you're coaching, you can say, listen, I was just working with this CEO of company X, and this is what they're really struggling with, and that was interesting to me.
yeah, no, and let's stay there for a moment, because
Yep.
you're right. it is a wonderful tool for me. I'm sure as it is for other speakers and trainers and authors to really get down 101, because it's one thing 101, because when you're in front of a group you can say anything and they'll go, oh yeah, it's probably fine. But then when you get in front of somebody, say, hey, have you thought about trying this? Well, I tried that, it didn't work.
Right, right,
Okay,
right.
well, here we are.
Yeah, yeah. How's that working out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Good. So give us a sense, because I'm always trying to figure out sort of how the pieces connect. Walk us through sort of Jones World, right? So there's coaching, there's speaking, all the different sort of the business models, and then sort of how the content flows through those.
Sure, sure. I have a routine that, first of all, just as far as thinking about content, I have a routine that I try to post a blog to my website once every 2 weeks. I post to LinkedIn almost daily, not necessarily my content because there's fantastic content done by lots of other folks out there. One of the things that's been interesting to me, now this is just me, is that I have scaled back my work on Twitter, on that tool, because I found that for the amount of time my assistant and I were investing in Twitter, it was just not a platform that was as effective for me as LinkedIn. And so I made the conscious decision that, you know what, I'll post some there, I'll go over and look at it, but it's just not going to be a place where I'm going to look at engaging as much as I do on LinkedIn. And that was hard for me, Peter, because we're taught, oh yeah, you need to be in every social media channel and you need to be posting content to all these different places. And 6 months later, I'm going, well, you know what? I'm still in business and I've been minimally involved with Twitter.
So I love that. Let me push that a little bit deeper. So I work with folks all the time, and when we're starting to work, I want to get a sense of, well, what are you doing? And they'll say, oh, this is what I'm doing on LinkedIn. This is what I'm doing on Twitter. By the way, I'm a contributor for whoever, a name brand. It might be a Forbes, it might be a Fast Company, it might be Inc., whatever. And I say, well, that's pretty impressive from a brand or a cachet or an ego perspective. But let's dive a little deeper on that. And they'll say, well, what do you mean? It's Forbes or it's Fast Company. I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing for Forbes? And I'm just using that as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, well, I'm doing 3 blogs a month, and I've been doing that for 2 years. And I said, okay, well, let's do some math here. How many hours is that? Oh, I don't know. It's an hour a blog, so it's 3 a month, and okay, so that's 200 hours. Okay, and how is that working out for you? Well, I'm writing for Forbes. Okay, well, check the box, because there's clearly that looks great from a branding perspective and a cachet and a differentiator. But ultimately, if your goal is to use that as a marketing tool, the ROI on marketing is either awareness or net new client acquisition. And ultimately, if you're doing an activity for an extended period of time and it doesn't ring those bells, you need to pull back. In some cases, it means you need to stop it entirely. Or in your example with Twitter, hey, let me just pull back there. That's not going to be where I spend or the resources of myself and my firm as much. I'm going to pull back. And I think sometimes when it comes to being a contributor with some branded high cachet organization, we suspend the logic of, well, let's do the math on what's in it for me.
Oh, absolutely. And I was guilty of that in every way. And so I found that, I needed to pull back in that area. One other area that I had and I knew this. And Peter, I wish you could see my office. I have this quote by Seth Godin that we all know, is that go after the people who want to hear from you. I forget, he words it much more powerfully than that. But and so I had kind of forgotten that. I had gotten so into the idea that I need to be acquiring new clients. I need to be expanding my databases, which is important. But I had kind of neglected my critical few. I had neglected the people in my newsletter database and the people who knew me. And so again, last year, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to return to that group. I'm going to be as intentional as possible about being intimately connected with this group. And so you talk about ROI. I sat down with a list of my clients since 2009. And I mean, it was over 500, I think, or something like that. I forget what it was. And so I started going through there and going, okay, wow, I have lost touch with that person. And so I would do a few a day. And so I started reconnecting with those people. And it was amazing how they're like, oh, hey, Jones, it's great to hear from you. I mean, many of them had not seen any of my last 2 books. And so, it might be I'm sending them a book, or I'm sending them a.
I love that, because we all get obsessed with growing our businesses and net new client acquisition, which is critical. But like you said, you went back over a 10-year period and found a whole bunch of people. One of the benefits of being in business a long time, getting a little bit older, is the folks that you worked with years ago typically are moving up the food chain, right? Or they're moving, right? Even just movement from company to A to company B and reconnecting after 5 years. There's just sort of natural cadence of, well, our engagement is over. We'll sort of stay in touch at a distance. And then 4 years later, haven't heard from you. But reconnecting to those that are warm, that you've built equity in, might not seem as sexy. But from an ROI and a marketing, efficiency perspective, I would imagine that rekindled new relationships and new business from that activity.
Oh, I talk about, yeah, I have. I have to look at my numbers, but I generated at least four new leads that turned into two new programs already
Fantastic.
from that. Yeah, and it was just one of those things where I just had to stop myself and go, okay, Jones, quit chasing everything and start going after, as my friend Todd talks about, the critical few. That tribe, that group of people who want to hear from you because they've raised their hand and said, I love the stuff you do about time management, work life balance, and yeah, I'm struggling too much to do. Okay, feed that following so that whenever they have need of your services, they think of you first.
Well, and in your case, let's say it was 5 or 6 years since you hadn't interacted with a former client. There's lots of new that you have, right? You've got new books, new content. I mean, and because of your sweet spot and expertise, you have more to say on the domain that would be intriguing to them. So it's not a cold call saying, "Hey, let's, can I sell you something?" It's more about sharing your content, your ideas, and your thoughts, and let's, as well as the personal relationship side, and let's rekindle, let's reconnect. And I would always rather hear from someone that had history with that was positive than reacting to some new solicitation.
Right, and that was talk about another thing that is working for me. And Peter, I knew this when I got into business years ago, is that I wanted to be all about the relationship. I wanted to be of value to my clients. I wanted them, when I was finished, to say that was fantastic professionally, and wow, I really enjoyed working with Jones.
Yeah.
His organization was just I'll just say it. I mean, it's going on your podcast. I just say it. I had kind of lost sight of that a little bit. I was in that churn of new client acquisition, and I got to go after the latest and greatest. I got to do this. I got to do that, and I kind of stepped away from that a little bit. And so I said in 2018, I says, no. You were about relationships. Let's go back to that. And to your point about people wanting to hear, when I would contact people, I have never said anything to them about, oh, hey, I'd really like the opportunity to book a program with you in 2018, 2019. I just say, hey, hey, it's been 6 years since we connected. I've got some new stuff. I'd love for you to to look at it if it'd be of value. And then, if it makes sense and the opportunity's there, and they say, oh, that's great, Jones, then, we keep a relationship going. But I just forgotten it because I was so busy trying to do so many other things.
Well, and I think it's also when we start, you need to only focus on new client acquisition because there are no old clients.
Sure.
And then it's a little
Yeah.
right counterintuitive to say, geez, I've been doing this a long time, and who are the folks that I've already served well that I just haven't talked to in a while, right? It's like, it's changed. So as we start to sort of wrap up here, give us some advice on one or two little things that you do sort of consistently that have served you and your clients well that people should maybe consider integrating into their toolbox.
Sure. One of the things that I do that is old school, but has worked well for me for so many years, is that at the end of every one of my presentations, or almost every one of my presentations, I give people a way to stay connected with me, to continue the learning, so to speak, or to continue information. And I'll it's a weird thing, Peter. I have these little quarter-page cards that have. They say feedback for Jones, and one of them says, "What did you like about today's presentation? What would you like to see improved about today's presentation?" And then, oh, by the way, here's a way to stay in contact with me. Now, I know there are wonderful apps out there. There's a link you can throw up at the end of the presentation, and I have tried some of those. But what works for me is that little yellow slip of paper, because people who want to get the PDF of my presentation, or they want to get some other information, then they write it down on that yellow sheet, and then after the presentation's over, myself or maybe somebody who's with me or somebody else goes through and picks all those up. And I can't tell you the way that has helped me to build those relationships with people, because it gives them an easy way. It takes all the barriers away. It gives them an easy way to stay connected to me. And then some of them sign up for the weekly Jones Zone, some of them sign up for the monthly newsletter. So that would be one thing that I think has worked well for me. The second thing is just having a routine. And I know that sounds so 101, but for many speakers and trainers and authors, there's just so many different things going on that can pull you away. I notice that if I spend a week or two really following the routine that works for me, that I start noticing that, wow, there are more people interested in my services. They're the if I'm really focusing on developing that quality content, that more people are commenting on it or sharing it or finding value in it versus just, okay, when I get time, I'll write, or when I get time, I'll create this. It's just really staying disciplined about having that routine that develops that content. Monday morning is my time. Now, it's not today because I'm here with you, and that's perfect because I'll probably get some content out of this one. But having that set time to develop that content is just uber critical to me.
Great stuff. Well, I thank you so much for joining us today and sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. Most of it good, but sharing some of your experiences and what's worked and different things that you've changed along the way. I think it's incredibly helpful, and I think it was quite honest, authentic, and transparent. So I thank you for sharing all that with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, and thank you, Peter. And when we met a few years ago, you planted seeds then that I should have
Well,
listened
thank
to
you.
about this whole refinement and what's your niche, what's your audience. You began to get me in that direction, so I certainly owe you some thanks. I apologize for not listening as soon. I probably could have been much less stressed and much more profitable in my
There you go.
business.
Well, better late than never, right? So there you go. Cool. Well, thank you so much. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.